Welcome to the United We Scan podcast, the podcast by rural carriers for rural carriers. The views expressed in this podcast are of the presenters and the presenters only and do not represent the views, opinions, or strategies of the United States Postal Service or the National Rural Letter Carriers Association. We ask that you please consult your assigned union representative for guidance in your local area. Please like this podcast, share with your fellow rural carriers, and subscribe to be notified each time a new episode is uploaded. Please leave a comment or question for us below. Thank you. Now, here are the hosts of the United We Scan podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 74. And we're going to get a little campaignish tonight. It's time for a change. So let's start off. James, how was your week?
Oh, the week was normal at the post office. The first 4 days of the week were actually pretty light. Even Monday was kind of light. I got out an hour under my normal Monday time. Then Friday was the day from hell. It seemed lots of packages, lots of DPS. Last one back to the office. Don't know why I got punished on Friday, but it just happened. But then the weekend came, started working on housework, and blew out my air conditioner unit. Cut the line on it while I was trimming the hedges around the air conditioner unit to keep it clear so that the air could flow through it, and ended up flowing the air conditioning out of it instead. So I'm gonna have a repair guy come out tomorrow and give me an estimate on how much that's gonna cost to fix. But everything else I got done with my housework and chores and things like that for the weekend. So I'm ready to start a new week. And I did want to shamelessly plug that Ron from Fed Up with Ron Speakman did finally publish the episode of my interview with him on Saturday. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, head on over there after you're done listening to this episode and check it out. How about you, Bill? How was your week?
Oh, Monday's normal, piled, up to the roof. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, nominal across the board, packages and mail. And it's funny in our office where some people, I'll start off with 6 or 7 trays of DPS on a Monday and drop down to a nominal 4 plus on, the rest of the week. And this week, for some reason, they decided that everything they could put in a DPS tray was going in the DPS tray. And it was all the fine little stuff that, single sheet, oversized, postcard type material sticking to each other. And no matter, I case my mail because I have so much what we call dirty DPS in my trays that I'll end up with a tray and a half at the end of a day if I don't. And I don't need that blowing around my truck. So I turned around and filled a tray and a quarter out of every day with dirty DPS. And it's so frustrating because they're only doing single passes. And that is the correct word, single passes when they run DPS. They used to do double passes and eliminate a lot of this. Now they do, they do the single passes because they're taking the people off the DPS machine and allocating their resources towards parcel sorting. So Friday, I explained pre-show what happened, and I'm still, upset about that. But I got my little grandson on Friday night and into Saturday. And that was fun, and it's been a quiet, drizzly week here, but all in all, not a bad week at all. How about you, Kristin?
Monday was the Monday from hell, as usual. Another 11-hour day for me. And then Tuesday was fairly light. I was done a hit return to unit at 13:58. And then I spent the next 2 hours redoing my case with my new case labels. And then clocked out at like 4:06, and then took off and drove 2 hours to go watch my youngest's spring band concert. And then I had Wednesday off for Ruby's appointment, and we have to go back in 3 weeks for a secondary ultrasound because things raised some eyebrows, so they want to double check some stuff. And then Thursday and Friday, I was training our new RCA, and I was off on Saturday. Yeah, that was
Yes,
pretty much my
yes.
week. I got my
Sounds
K
like a
back.
lot of fun.
You know, it's been nonstop all week, is what it has been for me. So that's pretty normal.
Yep.
It's go in. I'll work my 11-hour day tomorrow, and then I'll be back in the LLV riding with the new RCA for their final day of OJT.
All right. So a lot of states are getting their delegate ballots out now. The ones that, like Michigan, they're out right now. I saw Iowa was just out. And you got to vote for the people who you believe will make the change that you want to see in the Postal Service. So make sure you do your ballots. Make sure you mail them back in a timely manner. Expect at least a week for them to get there, just in case the Delivering for America plan delays the mail getting there. I know it took 4 days for an express to go from here to Virginia. Uh, 1 day express, 4 days. So plan accordingly in your area. Um, but with that, it's time for us to tell you why we are running for these positions. And now it is too late for the national board to take our ideas and run with them. We can finally actually tell you our plans. So let's start with you, Bill. Tell us exactly why you believe we need this change at the national board.
Well, the first thing I would say is that complacency is the worst possible avenue to continue on. Complacency in regards to the national board, we're complacent about the individuals that we keep elevating up the ladder, the position of president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, the director of labor operations, and director of steward operations. The executive committee positions are more or less stepping stones onto the national board. This has gone on for, at least the last 40 in our union. The problem of this is that, like Washington, D.C., all we're doing is re-electing politicians presenting our views who have no idea what we do on a day-to-day basis, what we're subject to on a day-to-day basis. And as a prime example, I'll give you our national president, Don Matson. Don Matson lives 320 miles away from his route. Most people would say, well, Bill, you must have that wrong. No. His route is in Sonora, California, 320 miles away from his primary residence in California. The reason Don has that is because he has August high 3 for his retirement. Route over and they put to subs on there on a daily basis. Now, with the adjustments coming in, it's going to be difficult to do it in Sonora, California, because they have limited space to expand. They have no room for more equipment or another carrier or any other situation that they're addressing right now. So his route might not get adjusted. So he'll carry that high 3 for a little more. And that's not the purpose of bidding on a route. Bump up your high 3s. That's not the purpose of, selecting an office 300 miles away. So what is your goal, Don, in regards to taking care of the carriers, or are you more interested in taking care of yourself? The reason I'm running this is because I'm like everybody else of the 130,000 carriers. I go to work every day. I'm around per se. And I see the situations. I've addressed these situations. I've grieved these situations. And these are the type of situations that have to be handled day in and day out. And utilizing the new director of steward operations, we will be addressing these situations. The fact that people can't get their radar reports, the fact that they can't get a package tracking report, that districts come out with, oh, you have to use the load truck feature so we can verify what you're putting in your truck and then, come after you for disciplinary reasons if a package isn't delivered. All the little mundane bullshit, and air quotes bullshit, because it's huge. Management is coming from the district level basis on national, even at the local level. Postmasters, supervisors who have no idea of the contract. Half of them don't even know what the RCAM is. And they're instituting policy on a craft that they have no knowledge of. This is what's causing people to go, I'll say, wacko on the internet. This is what's causing people who are dropping out of the union, people who are considering retirement earlier years before they actually plan to, because of the fact that it's such a hostile, toxic workplace. They don't want to do it anymore. I've seen where people have 28 and 30 years who are bailing because of the situation within the post office. And for the life of me, I cannot understand how every level of the post office isn't aware of this. And it makes me think that there's got to be some kind of coordinated effort to basically break the union. Not break the union as far as, having it dissolved, but break the union's will to fight. And I'm here to fight for each and every carrier, not for the NSS, not for the National Board, not for the executive committee people, for the carriers. There is only one reason you should be on the National Board, and that is to promote, educate, and protect your carriers. And they have lost sight of that. And there's no accountability whatsoever, except for at the national convention, where we are given the opportunity to stand up there and say, the king has no clothes. Ladies and gentlemen, John Madsen has no clothes, has no concern for us, never has, never will. He has got to go. Him and every longtime member of the national board, basically a cancer in our union, and we have to operate. Done.
You want to tell us your reason for running for vice president?
Oh, my reason for running for vice president. Well, thanks for putting me on the spot, James. Wasn't totally prepared for that.
After what Bill just said, it's kind of hard to follow that. But
it really is. That's why I'm kind of like, well,
he really hit the nail on the head with a lot of the reasons why a lot of us are running, and the support of people is the biggest part of it. Supporting the craft and supporting the carriers. But I want to know the exact reason you believe that you're the best candidate for vice president of the NRLCA.
Well, as vice president, number one job is to have the back of the president. In the event of something happens to where the president cannot fulfill their duties, the vice president must step up. Again, I am here for the craft. This, I don't have to do this. I want to do this. Almost to the point where I feel like I have to do it for the entire craft. It's, these guys call me Mama Bear for a reason. I take care of people. I take care of my craft family, whether it's in my office or, the phone calls I get, or my former office, or at conferences and conventions. I am always on the lookout and taking care of everybody in one form or another. And, I'll give credit where credit is due. It's taken over 5 years for academy training materials to be updated, as well as OJI materials, especially with Rex. It's, finally happening. I'll give credit where credit's due, because obviously the past vice president was unable to take care of that, whereas the current vice president has, and I'm very, very happy on that. Him and I have similar thoughts on how we view our CAs being the backbone of the craft, in which they absolutely are. I mean, if it wasn't for our RCAs, we wouldn't have our relief days. We wouldn't have our vacation days. And I know there are many, many offices out there right now that don't have RCAs, and people are working 6 days a week and 7 in some places, and they're getting denied their vacation. And that's not right. A lot of it comes down to, I think, retaining. It's not necessarily the hiring, it's the retaining again. And that comes down to the way management. Number one reason RCAs leave is because of management. I've seen it in my office like a revolving door because of management. I'm doing what I can to keep our one RCA there instead of walking out, because she's already mentioned that she won't fire him because we're already short as it is. But that doesn't mean she won't rag on him and push him to a point where he's going to walk out that door. And I'm doing everything I can to keep him from doing that. I've got it to a point, if I notice it's a training issue, because I did not train him myself, that she pretty much just tells him to go talk to me and walks away. So, or I hear her dogging on him, and then when she walks away, I go over and go, and explain it to him in a way I know that he's going to understand it. And then, oh yeah. And then coming to find out he was never trained on a lot of just the basic office duties. So that's where I'm at now, is training him on those basic office duties before and after. And, he's got 6 months in, but I'm still taking care of him. I have to. That's just who I am. And that's, and I mentioned this at Mid-States during my speech, was, I'm thrilled that there's going to be new academy materials and OJI training guide and whatnot. I think that's absolutely wonderful. When we actually see that, we don't know. But why I don't want to wait 5+ years to have that stuff updated. I would be, as soon as new stuff comes out, I'm going to be hounding USPS to get that updated, even if it's an addendum add-on sheet instead of printing out all brand new binders. Something to get it done when it needs to be done. I want to make sure academies have all the equipment that they need for every class. I know there's some well stocked classes out there. They've got all the cases they need, all the scanners, but there are so many of them out there that don't have the scanners they need. They don't have the cases they need, or the equipment, or the proper facilities and training materials. I want every classroom to have exactly what they need for every class. I would be on management left and right about treating these RCAs like human beings. And it just, they can't do that anymore. We are human beings, whether it doesn't matter. But these brand new RCAs, I mean, I get it. They tell us, well, things are different now than when you started. Okay. But at the same time, with all the additional stuff that's been added on, Rex activity scans being a big one. I mean, a lot has changed since I started nearly 10 years ago as an RCA. And 3 days is not enough time to fully cover. They may not cover everything in those 3 days. They may never see an express or a signature package or a certified or anything or registered that you rarely see anymore. But all those things like that, those 3 days with an OJI, they may not see it all or any of it. And then when they do see it, they don't know what they're supposed to be doing or how they're supposed to take care of it, because it might have just been lightly covered over an academy, but now they don't know. And I don't feel that 24 hours, 3 days is proper training. I would try and work with you. Well, I wouldn't try, excuse me. I would demand that USPS would accept a full 40 hours of training, up to 48. Because 3 days is not enough at all. I see it as training new RCAs, and I hear about it constantly. And yeah, I mean, that's the one thing. There are several different publications out there that specifically say management is supposed to treat us with dignity, fairness, and respect. But how often do they actually do that? And especially with the newbies when they want to just throw it onto them so quickly. And that needs to stop. And then, of course, so that's the big one, is the academy, the RCAs, all that good stuff. I think to me it's probably one of the most important ones. And then vice president is also the ones that set and plan the conventions. And yeah, that's definitely a daunting task. I am familiar with that after having 15 years experience in hotels and resorts. So yeah, I want to see, we've got keep bouncing back and forth to the same locations. I want input from everybody to say, hey, why don't we have it, there's this new place here, or hey, this place is willing to cut us a deal. I want my carriers to reach out to me and say, hey, look at this place. How about this one? Or something different, so we're not bouncing back and forth for the most part between the same locations. I know I'd want to go someplace different. But, definitely that's the focus. We'll wait and see if that resolution, if they introduce it again for every 2 years, even passes. We'll see what happens there. But, conventions and RCAs. Oh, yeah, an editor of the magazine. I want to see stuff that pertains to what is going on currently more often. I am over the republishing the same article every season. Let's update that article. Let's make it a little bit more appealing so it's not the exact same thing word for word when they come out a year apart from each other. I want new inputs. I want new, more up-to-date stuff on what's going on. I want the people to know that there is some transparency in the magazine as well. So yeah, that's, I want to take care of the craft. I want to find more ways to reach out to the craft to get better training and overall coverage of training for our new RCAs, and of course have the back of my president.
And this is, I'm running for Director of Steward Operations. I'm going to tell you exactly why I'm running for this position. And it started a few years ago when I was trying to get help, and the only person responding back to me was my ADR, and she is an overloaded worker. She works her tail off for the craft. And I got to give a shout out to her because she's been one of the biggest inspirations behind me learning all this stuff for the union. But I know there's a lot of lacking in that as well. We have ADRs that are working 100 plus hours a week on top of doing a mail route as a part-time ADR. We have carriers out there that have 10, 15 years that don't even know who their union steward is, let alone how to get a hold of the union or any of that information. They say, oh, you get that information at the academy. They show you that stuff at the academy. I can tell you in a logical sense, most people forget 3/4 of the stuff they heard at the academy. And the problem is the union stuff is just one day of it. And they have to learn their job, plus they get all this union information, they're signing all these papers, and even the dues paper that they sign at the academy is just another form that they just sign off on most of the time. But our craft needs to be informed more so than it is, and more so than it has been. We have so many manuals and the contract and step fours and MOUs that come out all the time, and carriers on the ground don't get this information. It's not readily available to them. You have a social media presence for the NRLCA. But with the fact that they turned off the commenting on it means it's not getting exposure. That means people are not seeing it on their wall. The only way they get to see it is if they turn around and they go to the union site to see it. So, how do we get more people informed? How do we get more people involved? How do we get more people understanding that management is behind the eight ball in this situation instead of the carrier? How do we do that? With more information getting to the carriers. Right now, as it stands, our current leadership has the mindset that if a carrier wants information, they have to reach out to the union officials. They have to seek out the information. They have to go here, go there. And if they're not a dues paying member, oh well, good luck. But you can get your steward information on the union website without having to log in. That is one of the things that they did allow, finally, when they switched over to requiring everybody to log in to see stuff on the website. But you should know exactly who your steward is. You should have their business card. You should be able to ask them any question and get an answer. And that's not happening. And there are stewards out there that'll answer the same question 7, 8, 9 times for the same person. But I'm going to use an air traffic controller situation in this. There's a little Cessna plane flying along, and it's asking for its airspeed because it doesn't have an airspeed indicator in the cockpit. That air traffic controller is going to say his airspeed the exact same way the first time to the same way the 10th time. Why? Because that is that air traffic controller's job. To answer the carrier's questions is what the steward's job is. So it's time for our stewards to step up even more so than they did before. It's time for the director of steward operations to step up for our stewards. And it's time for the lines of communication to be open for the craft to everybody in the steward system. Because no matter what, they need the answers. So, Bill, the next question I have for you. You've gotten settled in at the union office as president. What is your first task that you're going to do after you've gotten settled in, figured out where everything is? What is your first task?
That's contingent on the basis of where we are in contract negotiations. If we're still in the midst of contract negotiations, that would take precedent over every and anything else right off the bat for me. The reason being is that some of the topics that were brought up to me in regards to RCAs, new hires, and everything else, especially the people who sign up for the union, where we're taking dues out while we can't represent them. So that would be like one of the resolutions that need to be passed, that if you join the union, you're automatically represented as soon as they start taking dues out. None of this 90-day crap, and negotiate that with the post office also. I would have to say after that is, there's going to be a brainstorming of everybody of the national board in regards to where we're going, how we're getting there, and what is of importance. And I would want everybody's input on that because of the fact that since we are a union of 130,000, there is no one person that has every answer. And as in our comment section was earlier stated, many people can have the same view in regards to stealing our ideas for, election. But it's not the way that you see it. And it's not the way that, the issue is presented. It's the way everybody sees it differently. And you can have one opinion on a subject, but you'll have 9 different, objections to that. And everybody has merit to that in their own eyes, to their objections to something that you're presenting. So say we are in stasis per se for the contract. The contract takes precedent. After that, it is getting down with the Director of Steward Operations and the Director of Labor Operations and taking a hammer to the United States Postal Service about how our carriers are treated. Talk about the J440, where you're supposed to be treated with respect and dignity. Every RCA ought to get a copy of that as they come out of the academy so that they know that they have the right to be protected. Unfortunately, because of that 90-day rule, and it's 90 work days or 1 year, one calendar year, many of them are intimidated and don't want to stand up or speak out. That's got to stop. That's where we have to turn around and we have to be the biggest bully on the block. And we are going to take it to the United States Postal Service in regards to how they treat our craft. Once you demonstrate that for the craft, for the individuals in all offices across the country, once you demonstrate that you're willing to back them, won't forsake them, they'll start standing up for themselves. Not everybody is a Bill or a James or a Kristin or many of the other people who have stood up for the craft. But we're going to help you grow a backbone, and we'll make you confident in what you're doing, how you're doing it. We have your back. That is probably the biggest concern I have after the contract is the way our carriers are treated, the way the districts come out with these arbitrary rules, such as in Philadelphia, my district, where a postmaster puts out a memo saying that all carriers have to use the truckload feature. No, we don't. Then the postmaster, because somebody from Philadelphia said so, says we have to do it. No, we don't. It's not in the recs. We don't have to do it. Everybody has their own style of loading and unloading their trucks and staging their parcels and everything. It's not a requirement in recs. So as soon as that comes out, bang, it's handled. Okay. As soon as somebody gets disciplined, bang, it's handled. In our office, we just had 3 RCAs in for PDIs without union representation because management failed to tell the carriers they were entitled to it. And then after confronted about that, management said, that's not our responsibility. It's their problem if they don't know that. Wrong. You're to give them that opportunity. They weren't given that opportunity. Luckily, we didn't lose anybody, but now we have intimidated carriers who are afraid to do anything, say anything, look a certain way. Enough of this horseshit. It's time for us to become the bully on the block and take care of these people in all these offices across the country who are abusing our carriers. After that, I really don't know. I have to see where else we're going. One of the things I would be looking at is the books in regards to board policy for expenditures for national board members and executive committee people, because there's a lot of money going out the door for 9 people that I just can't justify. It's almost $2 million for 9 people every year. I'm a numbers guy, and I'll be crunching them with Turner if he's still in the office, whoever becomes the secretary treasurer. And I'm going to make everybody accountable for what they're spending, how they're spending, and why. So, contract, carrier protection, fiscal accountability.
Kristin, after you've settled in, you've figured out where everything is, how everything's going, what is the very first things that you're going to work on?
Well, depends. Like Bill said.
You're muted.
Yes, I was muted. like Bill said, see where we're at in contract negotiations, because that takes precedent. And following that would be where the hell's the new material for the academy? Is Last I heard, it was going to the printer. So, that would definitely be the top one there. And then I think putting a topic agenda together for new topics and articles for the magazine. And then follow up with the convention stuff or anything else the president wanted me to do.
Well, I want to make sure that you get all the equipment needed into
Absolutely.
the academies.
Yes, absolutely. And I would like to see, we had a roundtable at Spring Booster with academies and OJIs. I'd like to see a roundtable split up via Zoom with in the different areas with all of our academy instructors and OJIs, and doing like a roundtable Zoom with everybody together to feed off of each other and see where everybody's at. Because I would like to see the same curriculum across the board, no matter who's teaching it or who's training that RCA. I want to make sure that the same things are being covered and each RCA is given the same chance. And I think, like one of our past episodes talking about the different ways of learning, making sure that OJIs are the compassionate type of people that take their time to listen and find out how that RCA learns and what's the best way to continue training them in a way that they understand and can pick it up easier. I think we definitely need something like that included in with our trainings when it comes for academy instructors and OJIs. So yeah.
I agree with you,
Mr. Gene. What would you do in your first 90 days as Director of Steward Operations?
Well, in my probationary period as the Director of Steward Operations, the very first thing, of course, is the contract negotiations. All the board members are supposed to be involved in the contract negotiations. So I want to know exactly where we stand, because for two reasons. The first part is, number one, our craft needs a good contract this year. Every other union in the nation has gotten a good contract. And it's time for the NRLCA to have a very good contract. One that when the stewards step up to fight management and their wonderful infinite wisdom of, oh, I didn't learn that yet because I wasn't required to learn that by my regional officer. It's time for stewards to step up and fight with a good contract. So the contract is top priority for everybody on the national board, and it doesn't matter if it's us or somebody else. But the very next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going through all the grievances that we have in the nation and finding every single one that involves workplace harassment and abuse by management. Because we have a wonderful MOU 25 that I have yet to hear be enforced. MOU 25 is the first step to getting management removed from rural carrier supervision. And it's not being utilized by our leadership because we're settling for language too much. So my first order of business is there's always going to be some monetary compensation for carriers for any contractual violation, because it is not an honest mistake. It is not ignorance. It is stupidity to think that management that sits on their butts in the office all day long, staring at a computer, telling carriers that they're sitting stationary too long on a hot day, could instead be studying the rural carrier contract. They could be studying the city carrier contract. And one of the biggest things that I've done this year was 21 resolutions to the convention. 21 resolutions are heading to the Michigan State Convention, penned by me. One of those resolutions is a management tracking system for the union, to design one and have one readily available for stewards and national leadership. Because we need to figure out where these bad managers are, where they move to, who they're supervising, because we want to get them away from rural carriers until they can learn to be a proper manager. Because the hostile work environment with harassment needs to stop. And that is going to be my first goal, is to work on getting rid of the hostile work environments that our carriers deal with. I'm going to work with my Director of Labor Relations, my national regional officers or executive committeemen, and the rest of the national steward system to find and remove as many bad managers from the USPS as I can. They will no longer supervise rural carriers if I can help it. And if that means I have to go like Memphis with the city side, where they had them actually fired by an arbitrator, or if I can get national USPS management to do it without all that paperwork. One way or the other, we're going to get rid of the I don't care managers, the ones who don't want to learn their job and are just there to collect a paycheck. And we're going to get good management. I'm tired of hearing carriers say, my manager is a unicorn. My manager is a diamond in the rough. I want the unicorn to be a bad manager. I want the rare postmaster or supervisor to be the one that we're working on to get removed. But right now it's the other way around. And it's time to change.
Can I add to that, James? It's not only the bad managers and supervisors, it's the ones who are supporting postmasters and district managers just because they said so. I'm following orders just like you have to follow orders. No, you don't. If you're knowledgeable in the contract, if you're knowledgeable of RCAM, if you're knowledgeable about how to treat people respectfully, and you shouldn't be following those orders. And just like I once had a supervisor who fought for us, you could become that person, that individual that fights for your carriers, your craft, defend them. But you can't do that when you're in fear of losing your job every day if you said no to your PM or your POOM. And that's an attitude and mindset that has to be changed too. Now, we can't actively go in and have management fired. But we can make life so miserable for them that they'll want to quit. They'll want to move on. And we want them to quit. We don't want them moving to another office and creating the same scenario there. But we're not going to tolerate this horseshit. And we're not going to tolerate settling for language. That is one thing I want you as Director of Steward Operations to eliminate from our grievance process, settling for language. The only language we're going to settle for is abide by the contract, pay a financial penalty, and it accelerates every time you violate it in the future.
And I will agree with you on that. And I said this on Ron's platform. If there are managers out there that are supporting their carriers and it's coming down from above them, I want to know who it's coming down from. I don't want to be going after a postmaster or a supervisor that doesn't deserve it. If they're getting it from their district manager, I'm going to go after the district manager. If it's coming from the regional manager, I'm going after the regional manager, because I want it to stop at the source. Because, as they say, one bad apple spoils the bunch. So we're going to remove the bad apples And I don't care if you've been with the post office 30 years, whatever. If you're treating my rural carriers, my brothers and sisters of the craft terribly, or you're forcing people to treat my brothers and sisters of the craft terribly, I'm going to bury you in paperwork. I'm going to make you wish that you had decided to retire long ago when the going was good. Because the paperwork's coming. Because our carriers have been harassed for too long. Management has had it too good for too long. And I will stick by that statement. That is one thing that we will say is management has had it too good for too long. And I'll steal that quote from Maston and change it a little bit. All right. Next thing.
Was that with or without the salted caramel macchiato?
So the next thing I want on you is, what is your focus in terms of long-term sustainability of the rural craft, Bill?
Oh, this is a difficult one. There's
Mhm.
the first problem with long-term sustainability of the rural craft is the financial stability of the post office. And that's a big deal here. Oh, hold on. I got two dogs visiting me right now. Puppies. They're my neighbor's dogs. They come up for biscuits. Let me get back to you. Okay, I got to address these dogs here. Hold on.
All right, Kristen, we'll give you that question then. What do you see if you were the vice president? How would you ensure a longer term viability of the rural craft?
Oh, wow. That is a tough one. Well, longer term viability of the rural craft means rural carriers need to stand up for themselves, number one. We're not going to roll over. We're not going to become a city. God forbid we have to go through that micromanagement. The post office is changing. We all know that the amount of mail that we handle today is definitely not what we were handling 5-10 years ago, and we're definitely more on the parcel side. And that's gonna break us down even more physically. I mean, this for the longevity of the rural craft, it is so hard to try and call what you want to see for it, other than everybody standing together to not allow management to bust us down any more than we already have been.
I'm back.
Now, Bill, what do you see as the way to make long term sustainability of the rural craft?
Okay. Long-term sustainability of the rural craft is A, better pay. B, better treatment and training. C, continuous education. Like Kristen has said, you can't learn everything in 90 days. When's the last time somebody's had a foreign COD? For
I
me, it's been
never
almost
have.
20 years. Yeah, exactly. You're not going to learn everything in 90 days. If you have a seasonal route like you do, Kristen, right?
Yes.
Are you going to learn everything in 90 days when in 90 extra days it's all going to change?
Yeah, I mean, you
And
come in
yeah,
the middle of
okay.
you start in the middle of the summertime, everybody's there. So, you're
Yeah,
looking at
exactly.
October, November coming in, and that's when everybody's leaving. They're like, "Oh, what's going on?"
So for the sustainability of the craft itself, you have to have subs. It's
Yes.
just it's nuts and bolts. Okay, the bolt doesn't work unless you've got a nut on there. Okay, the thing about my problem is that we don't have enough in office support for new RCAs, and there's a certain resentment towards RCAs from some carriers. There's a certain amount of indifference for RCAs from carriers. And then you have the few like myself, Kristin, and probably yourself, James, and others out there that are truly concerned about the welfare of the RCAs. We have to encourage them. We have to educate them. We have to support them. And that's one of the things that with like an OJI or your academy instructors, they have to go back to be able to get support and information and direction on how to do their jobs, what their what their responsibilities are. It's hard to make them go out and read the 603, which is basically outdated right now, but is still in effect, or the contract or Rex. I mean, Rex is I've got 400 pages on Rex. How many new people are going to read that? Let alone people who've been in the post office for 20 years and have a career. Not many. And that's where the support comes in from your vice president, getting the academy instructors up to speed, from your director of steward operations, making sure that stewards are there for the support of the carriers. That's where we get rid of the language, settling for the language. The sustainability of our craft itself is dependent, to me, is dependent on what the national board does for the body, the entire body, union and non-union. Because as we have seen at SWAC, 240 carriers bailed on the union. That says a lot, because it says they've given up. So how do you expect new people to come in there and support the union, support the craft, when all they're looking at is getting a paycheck? We have to make them see that there is more beyond the paycheck, that there's a future, there's a career. And all these are mitigated with our association with the United States Postal Service and their forecast, their vision, their Delivery for America initiative. The fact that we have now seen that DeJoy is suspending any more consolidations in the SD&Cs because of the pressure he's getting from government officials. So everybody has to work together to sustain our craft and sustain the United States Postal Service. We are moving away from being a mail delivery service, being a parcel delivery service. That does not give us any leeway in still performing our jobs, delivering the checks, the diplomas, the birth certificates, the social security cards, all the other material that the United States Postal Service has been dependent on a daily basis. But as the Postal Service itself is changing, as the direction of our industry is changing, we must adapt too. And in doing so, the post office has to adapt with it. So therefore, we have to work with them on one hand, make sure that the Postal Service is sustainable so that the craft is sustainable. Does not mean we have to kiss their ass, and does not mean we have to tolerate their attitude in regards to how they treat us. And like I said before, when I become president, we're going to go in there with a big stick and we're going to stand up for our craft and show them we will not be pushed around anymore.
I agree with both of you on that. And the biggest thing that I can see us to be able to sustain the rural craft is, of course, remembering that we are not a business. We are a service, a government service. Granted, we currently do not get tax dollars to support the Postal Service, but yet we still have been able to maintain our service while continuously losing money. And one of the biggest things I hear is we're going from a mail delivery service to a parcel delivery service. The most interesting aspect I can see from that specifically is when we initially started doing parcel delivery service, Congress approved it on the basis that what we charged for parcels was the cost it was going to be to deliver those parcels. And if we have contracts out there with agencies that are costing us money to deliver their stuff versus breaking even or even making a small amount of profit off of it, then obviously we've done something wrong. This Delivering for America plan on a whole is not going to be cost efficient in the grand scheme of things. Sure, centralizing delivery is a great way to remove a lot of the overhead costs associated with maintaining buildings and structures and parking lots for carriers. But the cost of moving all those people to these centralized locations, sending all these vehicles from this centralized location out to all these routes is going to cost a lot more money in the long run than one truck running from building to building to building. But you can centralize a few items in the Postal Service to save money, but not all of them. Just like Rex could be a good system if people did it the right way, so could the Delivering for America plan. The current plan as it is not financially sound. And if we were to continue with it and find out later on down the road it's not financially sound, what's the first thing they're going to cut out? The last mile delivery. Because delivering to houses in the middle of nowhere costs a lot of money. That is why FedEx, UPS, DHL have used the Postal Service for a lot of their last mile deliveries, plus their overages in areas that they do deliver to, because it's cheaper to send it with the Postal Service than to send one of their drivers out there to deliver that package. We still can capitalize on that market. And if we don't, then we turn around and we become just like FedEx, UPS, DHL, and the rest of them, and we literally lose our one piece of the country that makes us one of the best services in the country, and that is we deliver to every single household every day. Rural carriers and city carriers deliver to every single household. People that we're going to cut out of the system, especially, are your Amish communities. They use the Postal Service, hate to use the term, religiously, because it fits within their religious values. So when we cut out last mile deliveries, one of the biggest ones that are going to get impacted is the Amish communities. So we have to protect ourselves. We have to ensure that what we're doing is a plan that keeps us the service that we are, keeps the service that we maintain, lest we lose everything we've accomplished so far in 120 years. Our craft, though a lot of people see us as the redheaded stepchild of the post office in a lot of ways, at least that's what some other crafts call us, we are one of the most important parts of the Postal Service. Each and every one of my brothers and sisters of this craft is an integral part of what keeps this Postal Service the service it is. So for long-term viability, us being the best craft, the most knowledgeable craft, the best protected craft, is the only way the rural craft will continue beyond the next 5 years.
Then to add to that, James, You got to remember the United States Postal Service guarantees universal mail delivery
What are you doing?
to everybody. But that does not mean we have to give up an advantage where we will be delivering in the rural areas that FedEx, UPS, and DHL won't deliver, and Amazon. That's why they do the handoffs that they do. Now, with the recent contract with UPS, we're seeing an influx of materials and packages from UPS because of the fact that they're now holding almost all their drivers to a 40-hour work week because of the fact that they are paying them out the ass with this new contract. So, again, we have an opportunity here to take advantage of this situation. There is no reason that we are giving Amazon a discount that we have been giving them ever since I addressed the Postmaster Brennan at a National Harbor, saying they're getting $1.49 parcel discount. And in that time, parcels weren't boxes of dog food because we wanted to get their business. Well, by doing so, not only did we create the market for Amazon, we also created the foothold for them to see the viability of delivering in focused, concentrated urban, suburban areas. Now they've taken that business off of us while still maintaining the discount that we give them. It's about time that they pay their fair share. Universal service only applies to the mail. When it comes to the packages, you pay for the last mile. And that's one thing that the post office needs to do is negotiate that we are getting our due for our cost. I'm getting to the point that I'm very tired of the stories you see online, Facebook, and the rural regular carriers and rural carrier associates, uh, all the different groups where the people are being mistreated day in and day out. I just saw one maybe 15 minutes ago where somebody was apologizing to an office in Florida because their PM is heading to Florida from Michigan. And they elaborated on all the things this person's done, from falsifying records, um, desk, your case, check out what's out in there, turning around and demanding second trips on missed parcels. That's not the purpose of sectors, folks. I hate to tell you. Uh, there's clarification as far as second trips are concerned, and to me, I fight it and say, yeah, I'm sorry if it's a sort, it's not a second trip. You take care of it, and I'm just sitting there going, we've got to start from the ground floor up in regards to addressing these issues.
Where'd James
All I
go?
had for
Oh,
my
there he is.
questions. That's pretty much. I pretty much planned this out to be about an hour total. So
Yeah.
we're just about hitting that mark, right?
Yeah, we're roughly there. Let me look and see.
I'm
I've been
just so
recording for an hour and 5 minutes, so yeah.
I'm just so disappointed in the fact that for the last at least 8 years, we've seen the national board, like I said, just push the next chair up, push the next chair up. And I have to tell you, it's not just the fact that the people going to the conventions are the only ones voting, which I disagree with, but the fact that your national board can go out there and they can politic every time they visit a state convention. What do you call those
Regional
little
conferences.
no, what do they call them?
Boosters.
Yes, boosters. They have people out there, and a lot of these people at the state level, at the booster level, at the conferences and all that, they're all tied in with the people who are on the national board. They get invited to Washington. We won't mention anybody that we know who's been to Washington for a legislative, affair. But the thing of it is they rope you in and then they, garner your support because, oh, we'll get you a trip. We'll get you, time off from work. No, folks, this is not about that. This is about promoting the craft. This is about protecting the carriers. This is about education and rights and decency and fair pay. This is not about, oh, who gets to go to Washington or who gets to go to Tacoma or go to Hawaii to help out 7 carriers, that are, displaced by the fires. Not that we know that all 7 carriers there were displaced by the fires. What about all the carriers in the Midwest displaced by tornadoes? Or the ones in Texas from, displaced from flooding? I don't see anybody running out there. And we have people from the state level who are already there. So utilize the resources. The last thing you do is you don't spend 2 days to travel to Hawaii for a photo op. Okay? You have people in place there that can take care of the situation. Don't you have something better to do with your time than to fly to Hawaii for a photo op? Yes, as national officers, we would be concerned. That does not mean that we get a free trip out of it. Nor does it mean that we build up our miles so we can take our family to Hawaii for vacation. Don, this is about service. If you're not going to serve the craft, get the hell off the board.
I want boots on the ground doing things. I want people stepping up and taking care of this craft. I want my ADRs, my DRs, my regional reps on the ground helping carriers. I want everything solved as soon as possible. I want to be working with the Director of Labor Relations and the President to be getting the Step 4s that have been sitting there, one of them since 2017, 2018 that I've seen, that have still not been resolved, or at least we haven't been told they've been resolved. I want them resolved. Waiting 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years for things to be resolved hurts carriers, especially if that step 4 is something that got the carrier terminated. How would you like to be without your job for 4 years waiting on that step 4 to be resolved? It's not right. Carriers shouldn't be waiting for a resolution anymore. I want a streamlined process. I want it solved as quickly and efficiently as possible in the carrier's favor, because our carriers are the reason the Postal Service exists. It wasn't city delivery that started the Postal Service. It was rural free delivery. The rural craft started the Postal Service. So it's time for the rural craft to be the strongest, meanest, and best union in the Postal Service, and it starts with a brand new leadership change at the top. It starts with electing Bill May, President, Kristin Wakeman, Vice President, James Brennan, Director of Steward Operations, Jake Edel, Executive Committeeman. It starts by electing people who actually have been on the ground, dealt with what you've dealt with, seen what you've seen, and will fight day in, day out for every single carrier across this nation, not just the majority of them.
Yeah, I think we're gonna call that a wrap, guys. I really don't have much to follow up on between the two of them at all. Wow. All right, guys. Everybody have a safe week, and we'll be back next Sunday.
Everybody be safe. You're the most important delivery of the day. Especially, with summer coming up, you're going to get that comment. Is it hot enough for you? Oh no, I want another 20 degrees, you dumbass. Because I'm going to drive around it. I'm going to drive around in my pink thong, and you'll stop coming out to the truck, won't you?
I don't want to say this, but dude, if you're driving around with a pink thong, I got to get a picture of you standing there in your pink thong next to the mail truck, okay?
or you can get a picture from behind as I'm in the service certified at the front door.